Okay, welcome everybody. Welcome to our introduction to RaceQs. We have guest speakers, Paul Viola and Al Hughes, going to be talking about this. They are both J105 owners. Paul owns Gynt along with his wife, Sara Billey, who is the moderator. And Al Hughes and Al owns Creative. And I'm going to go ahead and actually, I'm going to ask Sara to kind of talk a little bit about muting and unmuting that she's going to be doing and when we can answer questions. Sara?
Oh, sure thing. I'm looking forward to the talk here. So just in case anybody's new to Zoom, it's easy to pay attention and watch on the screen and sit back and enjoy. But if you would like to interject with a question, which you're really welcome to do, you're going to have to look for the unmute button, which you can find by moving the cursor on your screen. You'll see what it should pop up. For me, it pops up along the bottom. And yes, there's a question in the chat. Can I record and watch later? I am recording it, and it will be available later. I don't know if you can record it simultaneously. You can try. And also, if anybody's interested, if you want to, you can put comments in the chat, just like Louis did. And that chat button is on the bottom too, and I'll keep an eye on the chat. And if there's a couple questions building up in the chat, either somebody from the audience can answer them, or we'll find a good moment to interrupt, but there'll definitely be time for questions. Okay, so take it away, Shauna, back to you.
Well, I'm just going to go ahead and turn it over to Paul. So Paul? Oh, Paul's needs to be unmuted.
Unmute me. Okay, thanks, Shauna, for inviting us to do this and organizing, and thanks, Sara, for moderating, and you'll get to meet Al in a few minutes. So we're going to talk about RaceQs. RaceQs is a thing that I have a lot of fun with. Let's see if I can get. Whoa, I seem to go to the last slide all the time. What is going on here? Okay, I got it. I think working here. Oops, that's weird. Okay, thank you for attending. Yep. The overview for today's presentation is that we're going to do a brief introduction to RaceQs. We're going to say what it's all about, but not go into too many details. Then we're going to just dive in and do a race replay to see why you might be interested in RaceQs. We're going to specifically look at the most recent CYC Blakely Rock race. And Al is going to narrate and I'm going to drive, and so Al will ask me to change things up as I go, but there's lots of little sort of things I can adjust, and we can see what you would be able to see if you were using it. Then we're going to transition to nuts and bolts of how to sign up and how to install. Sara's put together some nice slides about those important details if people are having trouble with that as well. And then if anybody has tried it and has any questions or so on, please keep them coming. We can see if we can get other people. But I think the output of RaceQs, the great thing that is potentially output is that if we all go ahead and participate in a race, whether it be a CYC race or one of the fun STYC races, you can really see that race and sort of record it and sort of relive it. So what is it? It's a collaborative tool for capturing and reviewing races. I think many of us have used something like Navionics for years, and you can record your track in Navionics and go back and see that. But what's nice about RaceQs is you're kind of recording your track, and it's less about doing anything with the app while you're sailing, because it doesn't provide a very fancy chart or any of those fancy features that Navionics has, but it will record that track, and then when you're done, it uploads that track, with your help, you have to go through a few steps, to the web, and then all of our tracks come together in one place, and we can all see the same time period. We can see every track that was recorded at the same time. So you run the app on your phone, it sort of silently tracks the boat during the race. At the end, you upload that track, and then you can go to the website and see all the other racers. And you can do additional work, which I often take the time to do. Those few other people I've seen in the community do it. You can enter the start line and race marks and finishes, and you can even sort of set up the regatta so you have start times and for particular divisions, and you can therefore just really relive your particular race. All right, I am not getting, so why would you do this? It's collaborative, you can see everybody else's track, but, I thought I might just mention that it's certainly fun to review the race. with the friends and crew. Sometimes I go back and watch, and I was like, "Come on, we can do it, we can do it." And of course, you know, we don't maybe, or we do. It's really kind of nice way to sort of relive the time on the water. But then you can go one step further and sort of try to understand what might have happened during the race. You know, when we went to the left, it turns out the right was favored, and it's so much more obvious when you can see everybody's tracks at once. Another one that is constantly getting to me is, you know, when I'm sailing, am I sailing higher and faster, or higher and effectively faster, higher VMG, or am I sailing higher and slower and losing? Or vice versa, you know, that other boat was going lower, did they actually do better? And you can really see that when you get on RaceQs, because you can see both tracks side by side. You can ask questions about whether or not, you know, decision you made during the race, where you decide to leave the fleet, get some clear air. Did that pay off? Because you'll rejoin the fleet and you'll immediately see if that was a win or a loss. Was there a lift on the inside? We'll see in the Blakely Rocks case that there was a lift on the inside headed down towards the rocks, and that's very obvious as you watch all the tracks go. Should we have ducked that boat to get to the side we wanted, or, you know, giving up half a boat length or so, or should we have tacked with them? Questions you can answer, because you can then look to see what happened, and you can see the other boats that maybe didn't and kept going on that track. And you can also sort of say, hey, you know, we went pretty close to Blakely Rocks. I wonder if we could have hit a rock. And then you notice the other guys all went closer, and you're like, well, I guess we were in pretty good shape. I want to hit arrow, but it doesn't work. So RaceQs in a nutshell is, first you download it, run it on your phone, then you go sailing, then you upload it, and then you watch on raceqs.com. Or I might make a video and post that to YouTube. That's another way to get it, even if you're not the kind of person who wants to go deep into it. This is what you see when you log into raceqs.com. This is my boat's webpage. For a while I was doing it under my name. Now I'm doing it under Gynt, my boat. I have multiple accounts. It almost doesn't matter, because when you go there and you click, like you will click on an actual race, what it'll bring you through is into an experience, which is a shared experience where every boat appears. So it's all good. And then you'll have every race you've ever done and uploaded, stored here. You can make a few notes on the race. You can share them with people, and they can click on the links and watch it as well. So, you know, when the screen comes up, and we're going to switch in about a second, you basically have this sort of overhead view, God's eye view, looking down on the whole fleet. You only see the boats that are tracking. You don't see the boats that aren't. So to me, that means that it's really much better if everybody's tracking, because at some point I might make a tack in order to avoid having to duck somebody. But if that boat's not in the replay, then I don't see them. So it's just way better, much nicer if every boat is in. And sometimes there's boats that aren't in your class that you want to get rid of. That's easy to do as well. So let's see, there's a lot of features which I'm not going to talk about. You can create matchups, maybe see that a little bit. You can see how you're doing for time and overall legs and statistics. You can look at some amount of tacking and jibing data. They attempt to do some analytics. They give you some scores on handling, helm, and driving. They give you the ability to see and visualize wind shadows, as well as a whole pile of 3D views. Another really great feature is that they have an awesome collection of podcasts which explain both how to use RaceQs, but also they actually explain things that you would like to learn more about in racing, and they do it using RaceQs, which I think is kind of a cool combination of the two. So let me see if I can switch now over to an actual race, in progress. Let me go back to the beginning. And here's the Blakely Rocks, the very beginning of the CYC Blakely Rocks race. And Al is now going to take over commentating, and I can pause and we'll just jump in when he's ready to go. And oh, by the way, let me take, while we're transitioning, now would be a great time to ask questions. And we can, you know, have some questions now as well as later.
Nothing? Okay, go ahead and play, Paul.
Sure, sounds good.
Okay, so for everybody, this is the J105 class, March 7th, I think. CYC Blakely Rocks race, first of the Center Sound Series this year. And you'll see it actually did not finish for anybody, but Paul has made his own finish, and he finishes first. So this is pre-start. You can kind of get the RaceQs does this little box below the starting line. And you'll see as it comes right up to the start, the box starts shrinking as the time gets closer to start.
And if at any point you need me to speed up, Al, I think we're still.
Okay, well, just wait to the start. And also on the bottom of the screen is sort of a timeline. And you can see starts, and the little T's are tacks and the little J's are jives. So there's boom start.
Al, I'm not seeing anything but your face on the screen.
Well, that you'll have to ask.
Sarah, what do you see?
Sarah. He only has his own screen full size.
So I see the screen Paul is projecting, and I have Al on the side. What are you watching the Zoom on? Is that the person on the iPad or something else?
Yeah, this is Mace on the iPad, and I had all the slides that Paul was putting up, but now that it's switched to Al, I only have Al's lovely visage on the full screen.
Okay, I'm gonna try something. Now what do you see?
Unchanged.
Mason, do you have a little button in one of the corners that has like a screen and a little box?
There's something called switch camera, but it is not doing anything.
Do you have a button called view options? Because I have side-by-side mode checked.
No, maybe I need to go to a laptop.
Yep, and I'll let you in whenever you log in.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
Looks like we're recording as well, so you won't really miss out.
Okay, while he's switching over, there is a question in the chat box from John Cahill. So
Yeah, Paul, you'll have to answer that.
Okay.
Let me read it out loud for the sake of the recording. Is the starting box countdown always on recordings by default? Because he recorded the same race and did not see the shrinking box.
Yeah, so a lot of that has to do, by the way, sometimes RaceQs features appear and disappear. It's a bit mysterious. I can't guarantee you every feature will appear for you. Basically what I did was I set up the Center Sound series here. Maybe someone else did actually. There seems to be 4 classes. This looks to be class 4. The start time of 10:20, then there's a set of marks and there's a mark race. So what happens is right before 10:20, it sort of does its best to guesstimate how much time is, well, it knows how much time there is because it's got everybody's GPS track and that's all tagged with time. It guesses how strong the wind is, and that's how it draws that green box. I have been in a mode at times where it has not drawn the green box as well. So maybe at some point you can try it and we can, play back and forth and see, you can ask me more specific questions and we can do a shoot screen share.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. I was in the start, I think 1 or 2 starts before this.
Okay.
And I started the recording, I think at 10:05 because I knew, we weren't the first start in the race.
Right.
And I've actually used RaceQs before, like a year prior or so. I removed it from my phone and reinstalled it for this season. And I'd actually never seen that start box until now. So It's the first time I've seen it. It looks cool though.
Yeah, the idea is that if you're on that trailing edge, then you're going to hit that line full run. And so it's a handy thing. And Al didn't mention there was a big jam up at the pin, but now I'm going to hand it back to Al.
Yeah, there was a big jam up in our class at the pin, and you'll notice Creative got boxed out and had to duck in behind. And John asked if there's an actual countdown. I don't think there is because they don't know precisely where that start line is. Paul puts that start line in. Yeah,
so the app does almost nothing for you like while you're out on the water. So that is the disadvantage. There's some cool, actually there's a watch app, which tries to do a lot more for you. I found that to be hit or miss. but at least it attempts to do something while you're out on the water. The app doesn't.
So how about we speed this up a little, Paul?
Okay, we're at 8x. Now I'm going to go to 16x. I'm going to zoom out a little bit.
So
Creative's way off here. Sorry.
You'll see in a sec. So creative got boxed out. We tacked early. My gut feeling was trying to get over to the Bainbridge side even from the start. So that just sort of double convinced me. And my thoughts were the tide was flooding in. Everybody's going to have to cross eventually. And I wanted to get to the other side soonest. And it sort of worked out. The wind shifted to the west the further west you got. So basically the first one to that, I think, made out the best. We crossed, I think, everybody, but then we kind of did some screw ups and lost out. You'll see this. We're going by West Point right now.
There's kind of an interesting thing you can do here is you can compare boats and switch back and forth. And you can see here, it's a lot easier to see height and speed as you switch these pairs of boats. These are kind of his head-to-head matchups.
While you're watching that, there's a question here from Elsie. Do you set the start line before or after the event, Paul?
Afterwards. And I can go a little faster. Al, tell me when you want me.
Paul, do you know if Phoenix just uses the phone app on RaceQ, or does he use boat instruments like you do?
I think he uses the app. He has a brand new set of electronics on that boat with Garmin electronics, so I'm not sure what he's doing. What Alice is referring to is that I actually don't use the app at all. I get a GPX. In fact, if you get a GPX any other way you want, GPXs can be output from Navionics or can come straight off your boat in some cases, then you can just upload that through a kind of you click on a different tab. So you're not running the app, you're just running whatever you're already comfortable with. So if that's Navionics, like somebody has their Navionics hooked to the boat's GPS and they prefer that, as long as you can get the GPX back out of Navionics, you can upload that. And that's what you're seeing here. Peer Gynt has never run that.
Can I interrupt you for a sec? Your screen seems to have frozen.
Okay, it is not moving right now.
Okay.
For everyone else, the reason I asked is Jaded's track is very smooth, like Paul's track. And I've seen it before. I said, gosh, we're all over the place. And Paul described it as that difference between the phone app and using the boat's instruments app. There's just more variability with the phone app.
Mm-hmm. So Puff goes off on their own, so I'm going to focus in on the main fleet here. Puff will come back in at some point.
Yeah, like when it's over. Oh, and all the little boat traffic and whatnot that you see on the screen is just a previous Google Maps photo.
Yeah, that was a great question from Al. It's like, what boat is this? It turns out it's a picture that Google took, and it's an aerial photograph, and there just happened to be a boat there.
But good photo of the rock.
We might want to just pause here, and you can see that lift that sort of happened in here. It's sort of everybody's kind of curving in here. This is where that lift happened, and that was a big win.
And that, at least from my experience, is pretty normal. It's not always there though. Don't count on it. And there are two boats actually leading that did not do the RaceQs. Moose Unknown and Insubordination.
All right, so this is where I'm gonna just pause for a second, switch over to, let's say, Peer Gynt and Corvo, just so that we can compare those two boats. was looking pretty hopeless there for Peer Gynt at the back.
But it's soon to change.
And
Looks like
what I'm doing
creative
while
and
I was
David
talking
were
is,
almost on top of each other right there.
yeah, I'm using my mouse to move things around and zoom in and out. I can move at the bottom, I can use the timeline. Let me just actually do one or two more things. There's all sorts of views. I'm not sure which of these views I like. There's the two-boat view. There's the, and then you can kind of zoom around. This is like, what if you were driving the boat? I'm not sure which of those I think is useful. Actually, and then you can even go dive in here and see all sorts of other information, which we can get to later. You can see an estimate of speed over ground in BMG. You can see some information about wind shadows, which is not useful downwind that much. Something about tax and jibes and groove analysis. Great question of which of those things is actually that useful. The color of the track is the speed of the boat. Red is moving fast. And it's a useful coloration, like they know how fast the boat should go. So.
Now, Al, you should describe what happened with the buoy here too for people who weren't out there on that race.
We got a long ways to go to the buoy yet, sir.
That's true, we do have a long ways to go. All right, so since I've passed Corvo, I'm gonna go with Jaded now. Jaded's out in front here. We jibed away for clear air. Corvo was playing with us, as Corvo sometimes does. So another thing you can see is like, okay, Jaded's hotter and faster, we're deeper and slower, but maybe it's okay, maybe it's not. It's worth going back into the race and seeing.
But now you can see now though that the hotter and faster, there's actually more wind out in the center. We ended up going too far to the east, and there was less wind over there off of West Point and where the starting line was, etc.
Once again, I think it's always really useful to look at these angles, these relative angles. You're like, oh, we must be in the same wind here, and somehow we're sailing differently. I'm gonna pause just for a second to see Corvo's here, Paladin's there, Puff's back here. Once again, we're taking the jibe when somebody gets in our wind mode.
But look at how much that paid off, Paul.
The jibe there, or just in general?
100 meters. 100 meters and growing.
Yeah. Once again, we're slower lower and equally fast, I think.
So yeah, for those of you who did not sail the race, the turning mark down here broke loose from the bottom. And so we're all chasing it north. And right about now, the VHF was squawking because basically the mark almost ran into the mid-channel buoy. And anyway, they called the race. There was no recovery. I think CYC learned a lot. We all were sort of disappointed, but it was still a beautiful day on the water. And Paul called this finish line here. That was not an actual finish line.
Yeah, I threw this finish line in. You can always then look here because it'll give you all this additional information. So you can see, for example, different drummer it thought was in our class. They finished way ahead of us, but they actually aren't in our class, but credit to them. Then I passed the line. Now, there were two other J105s ahead of that, but they weren't tracking. And then Jada, and it'll actually give you times, and then creative, and then they haven't finished yet, Corvo, Paladin, and Puff. This is just their estimate to the distance to the finish.
It was a really tight finish between all those J105s there.
It was a fun day too.
Yeah, it's just beautiful out there. Right. So that's the race. Maybe we'll pause here and ask for questions.
So if
I
you'd like to speak up, just unmute yourself and you'll be able to talk.
I have one question, but it's more of a troubleshooting question, and I don't want to disturb this.
Go ahead, Ken.
So I have Gaucho, and I was in the race too, and I was in one of those other classes. And for some reason, I installed the app. Everything was working great, and I got 21 minutes into the first leg, and it just stopped.
Mm.
And the phone ran the whole time. I mean, when we were done, I mean, I switched it off because obviously we finished before I thought we would. So I was just curious if what could cause that kind of thing, or if there's anything I could do to alleviate problems like that.
I'll take that real quick, just because one thing that we've learned is if you try to run anything else on your phone, it makes it much less reliable. So I would start with a question: were you running anything else on the phone?
No. In fact, I had it in my bag down below, or I had it, down below. I wasn't even using the phone.
So, I mean, the next best thing would be probably, and this is no guarantee. In fact, I'm not even sure it's likely to fix your problem, but you certainly could kill all the other apps before you get started.
Okay.
This comes back to my slight concern with RaceQs is that I'm not sure they're really fixing every bug or updating everything, and we don't pay for it. I almost prefer if we all paid for it, because then I think they would fix these bugs. You could have an email. You could say, "Hey, it crashed," and then they would answer your email.
Yeah.
But the reality is we're not paying for it. I haven't seen a way to pay for it, and I'm not sure how to fix it. I do offer you a backup plan. If you have Navionics on your phone, which is a cheap phone purchase, an iPad, I think you can offload GPXs from Navionics.
Okay.
And so the next time, just track it. Navionics is that you pay for that.
Yeah.
You can record the GPX, and then I think you can download that GPX on your phone and then mail it to yourself, and then you can go to RaceQs and upload it.
I have a question. Pure Gynt seemed to be just faster. Were you doing something, Dick? Can you tell what you're doing that was different other than setting a little bit lower? In fact,
I think Al pointed out that there were times when we were lucky in the wind. Let me go
Skillful.
back. And
can you tell that from watching this?
I don't think so, Ken.
Yeah.
I'm going by my memory of out there. And, it was pretty.
We overtook both Corvo and Jaded on the downwind leg, and we crossed them within 5 boat lengths. So they weren't really in different wind. Like when we caught 200 meters on them, it was hard because they were far away. They were 200 meters away. But when we crossed them, we were going lower and slower. We're lower and slower, but a lot lower and just a little bit slower. And then we always jibed away for clear air. I know that when we first crossed Corvo, we spent a lot of time thinking about, so there was slight wave action. And my careful reading of RRS is I get a main pump per wave. And so that actually seemed to get us 3 or 4 boat lengths as well. But I can't really contribute to that. I think we were just super focused on.
So who puts the wind directions on here, and do they do strength of wind also?
Yes, so that's a great question. They estimate the wind directions. I find them to be more accurate upwind than downwind. They do it using, if there's a lot of boats, they look at tacking and they try to say, hey, the wind must be symmetric across the tacks. So it's constantly updating the wind using every tack from every boat. They do the same thing jibing downwind, but the truth is I frequently don't jibe equal because maybe I have, I'm offset, and if you look at the polars for jibing, they're much more flexible. So I can also go in here, and for every mark, I can sort of enter what I thought the wind direction is, and I've tried to get it to game it right sometimes because it's so far off. It does help a little bit, but I can go ahead and add a wind direction. And in theory, I could add a speed. I've never added a speed. Maybe next time I will. Be interesting to see what difference it makes.
There's some good questions in the chat too, so let me read a couple of them. So Elise asked, can you replay the race with all the boats on the website or on the app or both?
You have to use the website. So the app doesn't, at one point I think they were trying to have an app, something for replay on the app, but I believe it may work on your phone to browse to the URL and you can click on it and see. I have not done it. And once again, I want to emphasize, I don't really use it while I'm out there on the water. Like what would be fun is you get your crew back in, you're at the dock, you're all drinking whatever you feel like drinking, and then you get it up on your phone, and then that would be great. I don't know, maybe some phones can do that. Maybe your connection has to be really good. I would guess all those things are true. My computer is currently, the fan is spinning, so you know, I'm surprised how much battery I'm using up. So it could be a stretch to get it to work on your phone. I tried.
Well, I can comment on that a little bit. I saw one of the links that I watched prior to this, and what I noticed is if you go onto the web, well, I don't know if this wouldn't work out on the water, but if you go to the website, you can send the URL to your phone.
Sure.
So that would be one way of doing it, but then you'd still have to go to the website to do that, I guess.
Yeah, I think there is no direct app way. You can see your track. Sarah's going to show you this in a minute or two. You can see your track, but it's not a fun, hey, where are the other boats kind of thing. It's just for debugging to make sure you get the right track that you want to upload. Okay, so that was it for here. I just wanted to quickly, while I have RaceQs up, RaceQs is full of online documentation. Once again, some of it's getting a little stale because they're not updating. Has a walkthrough video. Sarah's going to do some of that for us. There's a totally awesome, how do I get rid of this thing? Oh, just drag it. It has a great podcast, which is all done with RaceQs. I'd start at the bottom of the podcast page. The podcast link is here at the top. Start at the bottom, that's number one, reaching in and out. But towards the end, they get to some pretty advanced stuff. You know, most of that stuff is still true. And, you know, every now and then they update the application a little bit. They do interviews with the interviewers discussing what's happening in RaceQs. There's a set of videos for the fleet race replay. You'd say how it works, fleet race replay, and then there's a set of videos for how to do this. This is how you set up the race and play it back. There is a public regatta broadcast feature. I have never used it. We should figure out how that works because you can, in theory, you can watch from the, people can watch the race as it's going. They've introduced the delay so that you can't use it to sort of get information you shouldn't have from about the other boats. There's a set of additional videos about detailed race analytics. But let me hand this back to Sarah because she's going to walk through a little bit more about installing it, and people can have questions there. Thank you.
Sarah, unmute.
Okay, great. Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Al, for showing us RaceQs. It's really a lot of fun to watch the race after the fact and see what you got. I noticed that Paladin was on there too. We should have highlighted you guys to see how you're doing, but we'll come back to that. We can do it again at the end if there's time. So I just wanted to address what happens if you're brand new at this and just want to hold your hand a little bit. If you've never used RaceQs before, how to get started, because this is where I was and I need my hand held. So just want to share that. So first of all, you just have to download RaceQs from the App Store on your phone, or if you use Android from their App Store, and start it up. And then you do need to allow the app to use your location, at least while the app is open. Okay, that's important, or otherwise you won't get anything coming up. And then this is what I see when I'm sailing on my sailing apps. I have a bunch of really good apps actually, but push the RaceQs button here, starts it up. And what you'll see first, well, if you're starting the app for the very first time, it's going to ask you to either register or get started without registering. You can do it either way. Once you get through that, then it's going to ask your boat name. It's going to ask the length of your boat. I put those things in very specifically, 10.5 meters and so on, because it's going to help to make the right projection in the pictures. But once you get through that, it's really super easy to use. You see this big white button in the middle, it says start tracking. Just push there. Okay, really couldn't be any easier than that. And once you push start tracking, you will come to the third picture, something like this. You'll see a map, and after just a minute, you'll start to see a track forming behind you. Okay, so let it run as long as you want to. You can run around the block with it right now if you want to. You don't have to be out on the water. You can be absolutely anywhere and practice making a track. And then Up here in the right corner is the big red flashing button. So when you're done, there's nothing else to push and you don't know what to do. It doesn't say push here, but the flashing red button reminds you that, oh yeah, that's how I stop it when I'm ready to record. So push that flashing button when you're ready to stop, and you'll come to a page that looks like this. So when it questions you, do you want to save and upload, or just save only, or discard the track, or continue recording? And this is where you got to save and upload if you want it to appear for everybody in the race. Or you could save only if you want to go home and get on Wi-Fi or something before you upload. But I save and upload right there from the dock on cellular service. It's not a huge amount of data. All right, so once you've saved, you come back to the start panel again. So you could either start tracking again, or what I wanted to highlight is there's 3 buttons at the bottom that are really useful: preset, start, tracks, and settings. And you know, one nice thing about this app is you can push all the buttons, you won't break anything, so just try everything. So preset start is really nice for me because I'm very forgetful, especially while I'm out on the water. I got so many things on my mind that one of the things I often would forget to do is start RaceQs. And so I know I got a race on Saturday, so I already have it set up. So the 10 a.m. RaceQs is going to go on and start recording half an hour before the race. So I want to do that. And here's another thing you could do. Look at the tracks. This is every track that you've ever recorded. So they're just listed all out. I've got a bunch because I was getting these pictures, so some of them are real short. But you'll see all your tracks. And if you want to review any of them, you click on that right arrow on the right-hand side. And any particular race will come up and it'll ask you if you want to replay it. It'll just be your track on the phone here, but you can see what you did. Or you could upload it if you hadn't done it before, or you could delete it if it's just a test case. So super easy, right? This really nicely designed app, I think. And settings, I find this one useful too. There's a couple important things under settings. The first one is that auto shut off. When you turn it on, go to auto shut off. I'm not going to show you how to use that, but it's pretty obvious. You can set it so that when you get in your car and you forget to shut it off, it will notice when you start going 20 miles an hour, because you're probably no longer in your boat, and it will shut itself off and not take your battery life away. Also, I like this FAQ here at the bottom. This is full of all kinds of useful information in the form of questions that I might be asking. And I've asked all those questions. So that's a place for you to go for more information right there on the phone once you've got it installed. All right, and more resources, you'll see this again, but on the RaceQs website, they've got, like Paul said, the how to get started, and this podcast. Actually, it's a video podcast. If you haven't seen that before, it's not just a listening podcast. I kind of like it a lot better if I sit in front of the computer and watch the podcast, because you can see them on RaceQs. So these resources were in the email that went out to you today from Kathy. Okay, so it's 7:43. Should we turn it back over to Paul and Al for more questions?
Hey, real quick, Sarah, it's Elise. That screen that you have with the tracks screenshot.
Yeah.
So I've used RaceQs a little bit. I mean, I downloaded it when I first heard of it and I tried it, but I don't have the ability to replay or see my track on my phone. I don't know if it's an Android issue or if I need to do I need to pay for the service, or is this all through the free service?
So I'm using an iPhone. That might be the only difference. And I didn't do anything special to get that button. So I have not tried it on Android.
It could be an Android difference. I'd be disappointed to find that out. As far as I can tell, there's nothing to pay for. I've never seen a place on the website where you can pay. If anybody has, let me know, because I'd like to investigate it. I guess, Al, do you have Android?
I have Android, and I just hit the track button and up comes the last 4 tracks.
Yeah, but click on one of them. I have that, but you actually can't see the actual track. You can't replay. I don't have a replay like yours, like Sarah showed in hers.
Phone.
Well, then it goes to upload, and looks like you can email it to yourself. But yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So that's why I was wondering. Oh, this wasn't useful to me because I always want to see it right after I'm done, and I don't see it, right?
Sure.
And so I have to go to the website, and then
Yeah. So the thing you will see, even if you wanted to see it right after, is just a line on a boring map. It really isn't the other boats. It really isn't anything about start finishes or speeds or any of that stuff. I wish it was more interesting on the phone, but it isn't.
Well, and to let other people know, I basically could not see any tracks even on my computer because it's just too lame. It's, you know, it doesn't have enough memory and stuff. It was just like slow motion. Until Paul showed me the video, I was trying to early on figure out what the hell am I doing this all about.
So there are a couple of questions coming up in the chat too. Can I read them to you?
Yep.
So how do you identify the race when you upload?
Yeah. So let me go back to the website. Let me see. Should I share screen again?
Yeah.
Share screen, and there's maybe one or two things I'd like to show on share screen. So yeah, so you get to the web, you get to the actual RaceQs thing. There's Paul Viola. There's my race feed, and this is a list of the uploaded sales that I did, assuming each one. Can you guys see that? Because I just switched to sharing again. Is that visible, Sarah?
Yes.
But did you have to put those names on there, Paul?
I do. When I upload, oh, somebody asked, how do I upload a GPX? Let me show you. You click on My Journal, and you click Upload GPX Track, and then that actually will take you through this little, so then you pick like a GPX file, which do I have that somewhere? I don't know where my GPX files are. But you find a GPX file, you upload it, and then right when you do that, it asks you, what's the name of this track? What boat were you in? And a few other things. And this will be true if you're in Android or in an iPhone. So I would, because of the instability in the RaceQs app and the fact that I don't even use it anymore, and I had a little bit of issues with it not always finishing, anybody who can record a GPX file in a different way, I think that's a great way to go, particularly if that's an app that you have a lot of experience with. I was gonna say, I don't know if you guys can see this. So it is even possible using the RaceQs app. I was gonna, actually, before I introduce that complexity, Navionics on my phone and a few other apps on my phone can connect directly to through Wi-Fi to the instruments on my boat. Al, I'm betting your BNG system, you can connect an app to that. And then if you record your GPX that way, you're going to get the highest quality GPX. You get the boat GPS, and you get roll and pitch off your roll and pitch sensors. So Al, I'd be happy if that's hard and tricky for you in any way. But I'm betting you have Wi-Fi on your boat.
We do have Wi-Fi.
And then the reason most people have Wi-Fi is they want to get an iPad that can basically be a glass view of what's going on. So if you have that, you can connect that to Navionics and get a GPX. And it turns out, it looks like you can connect that to RaceQs, but then of course you're running the RaceQs app, and that might be, so this is basically how you connect that. And you'd get high quality GPS that way. So that answers two questions. One is how you upload GPSs, and the other one is, how do I deal with the fact that the RaceQs app is a little bit funky, is use another app, like anything that can get a GPX. Maybe something you're already using. Other questions, Sarah? Because once I share screen,
I'm thinking, it's funny, I'm just logged in for the first time. I've had the app, but now I see all my tracks from the last, like, were there. And who sets up, okay, so somebody has to set up the race, the mark, the line, the markers, all that. Yeah. And
so that's next week. I'm going to set up a race. You know, in fact, let's record, you know, some sailing this weekend, and maybe I'll set it up with all you guys at the same time.
So normally one person would set it up, and
yeah, so you basically drop in, you go in here, and you say, hey, I'm going to create this will be empty at first if nobody else has been in here. You create a series, and you create a regatta, then you create a class or a division, then you have a start time for that division, and then you start to add marks, so you can create a mark. So for example, I can add another mark here. Like, oh, that's mark 4. What the heck is mark 4? You know, then you're like, I have mark 4. Where does it go in the race? I guess by default, it seems to have gone after these marks here, mark 1, mark 2, and so on. But that's annoying. So I'll go ahead and.
Could there accidentally be a duplicate setup, or?
Yeah, there could be marks in there already.
Or
that can be good or bad. I'm going to delete mark 4 here, and I'm going to go in here and delete mark 4 here. so there's no more marks. And I believe there's a way to freeze this whole thing if you're like very happy with it and you don't want anybody to screw with it. And I haven't actually done that yet. So.
Because I've seen it where, oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Paul, I was just going to say, you're making the changes for everyone when you do that, right?
You are. It's very much a collaborative. Hey, it's CYC. Don't screw with anybody else, you know. But somebody else could come in here, get a RaceQs account, and screw with it. I think I can freeze all this. I haven't actually. I'm not seeing where I can freeze it all, but I think I can. So, which means no one can edit it after that.
Does anybody know what is the red and green button that shows up next to the tracks? Like when you go back to the previous tracks, red and green buttons.
Red and green buttons next to the tracks, previous tracks. I'm sorry. Left, right, bottom.
Sorry, on the app part. So it's Sarah. The list of previous tracks. There's at least on the Android version, there's a green dot or a red dot.
Oh yeah, that's whether you've recorded it and uploaded it or not yet saved it and uploaded it.
Okay.
Elise, did you get that?
Yes, I got it. Thanks. Yeah.
Just in case anybody's interested, my slides I just posted on my website, and so I put that in the chat. If you open up the chat, you could cut and paste that if you want. Also, there's a handy button with the 3 little dots you can see, which you can do save chat, and you can save all of the comments in the chat to your computer if you'd like.
So it's good to kind of have like a fleet captain set it up, or somebody that sets it up for the J80 team or the J105 team.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping next week when we start talking that maybe some of the back end stuff that Paul's doing, he could explain a little bit more. So in case somebody in the audience wants to take on that role for J80s.
I think Like does that for J80s. I don't know. Is Like here? No. I mean, I know that Like has been trying to get the J80s to use this app. And I think Like has volunteered to kind of do what Paul does. So.
Mm-hmm. And to be honest with you, I'm still trying to figure this thing out. It's got a lot going on. There's a lot of little features here and there. I don't know. It doesn't look like any J80 recorded.
I think there is. I'm pretty sure there is one. You might try class 1, or if you can show all fleets.
Yeah, so what's happening is I'm just not seeing any race marks for that class, nor am I. It says a 1005. I'm not seeing any boats for it either. So it just happened to be one boat. It'd be interesting if I'm not seeing them. Maybe if somebody from the J80 fleet sends me a link that maybe Lex sends out. I don't think Lex online. Then I can poke at that and see if
I think that one we were class 2. Can you click on class 2?
Yeah, so it's looking like maybe nobody. Here's Taj Mahal and Reckless.
Yeah, there you go. There's 2.
Oh, there they are. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Okay, Matahari thinks Matahari's in this race, and let's get rid of everybody I know who's not an 80.
Unfortunately, I started with the J105s, like 2 classes later.
So which boat is yours, Elise?
Well, I was on Jolly Green. It's not mine,
Okay.
but I was skipping that one that day.
Oh, okay. So it doesn't seem like this one got recorded for Jolly Green, but
yeah, I didn't start it for that day. I forgot. Yeah. I had a bunch of new crew. We were struggling to get started.
With Taj Mahal and Reckless starting
in the middle of our start. So.
Sometimes I think it makes sense to buy a cheapo phone that you don't really use and leave it on the boat and have it be your RaceQs phone and leave it underneath the, on the nav station or something as you go out sailing, so that it's not in your pocket, not lost overboard, and then you can use Navionics on your own phone.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a question for people. What's holding people back from doing it if you haven't already started?
Well, this is Wayne. Being on a dinghy, I don't like to take my phone out on a boat that I might capsize, although I rarely capsize. And what I didn't know is you can upload GPX because like we used to use CatTac, I don't know, years ago.
Right.
And I think my old handheld Garmin's upload GPX, so that's good to know.
Yep, that's right. I have a Garmin for my bike. I don't bring it to the boat, but I get GPXs off those Garmin's, and then they can just be uploaded.
Hey, Paul.
Yep.
Hey, it's Holland. Hey, GPX, this is only giving you your GPS data, or since we have all this wireless information with wind speed and boat speed, etc., can you get this into RaceQ as well?
Yeah, so there's a couple of questions there. One is, can we get additional data into RaceQs? And it appears as though you can get roll and pitch, and I think just roll and pitch, roll and yaw, or maybe, so that gives you slightly better sort of playback. I'm not sure how useful that is. I don't see a way to get into RaceQs data that you recorded about wind speed from your boat. Now, there's a second question lurking in there, which is what of that data can go into GPX? And it turns out I've kind of looked at the GPX standard to get technical. GPX by standard does not allow any of that information. It does allow you to have a comment field in your track points. And so you can put stuff in there, but it's basically not clear other apps will read it. So a different question is, if you wanted to record everything off your boat, including wind speed and all that other stuff, what's the right file format for that? I'll give you an example. If you have a Garmin system, it will output a file called a .fit file. And a .fit file has all that data in there, but Garmin has made all of that data proprietary, even though for the most part, .fit is actually a public standard. It's just their marine data is private, but the fit file I get from my Garmin watch, I can read. So it's a kind of a long story about how you get your data off of there, home, and where you can put it. But I don't think RaceQs would eat it besides roll and pitch and yaw, and I'm not sure how you would get it out.
All right, thanks.
Maybe you already have a way.
Thanks.
Sure.
People's experience with battery drain on the app during the race.
So I leave the phone kind of dark, and that helps a lot. But I think it's gotten better as my phones have gotten better. Like to some extent, the phones have the ability to run these apps without their battery running down. I haven't been bitten by it with my last phone, but it's a pretty new phone. Al, what have you been seeing?
A long time ago, yeah, I would say battery life was an issue. But again, with the, and it's a cheap Android phone, but it has a pretty big battery. I don't even get like half the battery for a full day. So, but plug it in. I mean, you know, it's not going to run your boat battery down for sure.
Down below. You can definitely have it down below. I think if you had bad tracks, like sometimes Al has bad tracks, I would maybe encourage you to get the phone out, you know, and the least stuff above the phone. But I think I already have a plan for Al. We're going to figure out how to get his phone on the boat network, and then he's going to get super high quality data off of that.
Yeah, I'm like John. I just put it in a drawer down below and never see it. And half the time I forget to turn it off till 3 hours after the race.
Right. And the slight disadvantage of that, as you pointed out, Al, is you get these kind of slightly jerky tabs. And the more open field your GPS is, the better it's going to be. The GPS on your boat is obviously in a very open field, as is mine.
Taking off an external battery could help too.
True.
Yeah, I was going to say the beauty of this is I used it before you could schedule your start and finish times. And that really helps a lot with battery life and everything else too. You don't even have to think about it along with everything else you're trying to do to get ready for a race anyway, if you're an owner or whatever. So those are really handy, I think, being able to start and stop it at specific times. But you got to think out, you know, what makes the most sense for your class start and all.
I just wanted to say that a number of times I've seen people just go out, sail, forget to turn it on. That includes me. The other one is they turn it on like halfway through the race, or they turn it on like after the start. So if you are going to have a pre-programmed start time, just give it a half an hour before your start, because actually the run up to the start is half of the interest to some extent, and then you don't have this weird thing where the boat just magically appears somewhere.
So Paul and Sarah, we're coming up to 8 o'clock, and so can we talk a little bit about next week, and then have people send us their questions over the week so we can make sure that they get answered on next week's talk?
Yeah, absolutely.
Where do they send them to, Sarah?
Yep. So, Paul, are you doing screen share or should I with the thank you slide?
Please take over, because
All
I'm
right.
about to lose battery anyway.
Okay. Let me share this guy. So, to the end here. So, can you guys see that thank you slide now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, thanks so much for attending, everybody. We're really glad to have everybody here. We're hoping that someday all of you will be using RaceQs and we'll be able to see you on there for races, and it'll be a lot of fun. So thanks to Paul and Al for explaining this much to us. And there's more to come next June 4th. That's next Thursday, 7 o'clock. We'll have another talk. In between now and then, you have homework, everybody. Go download the app if you have not done it, and at least run around the block and make one track. Okay, so everybody come back with at least one track, try and upload it, and come back with questions so that if you're stuck anywhere at all, we can hopefully help unstick you. You don't have to sit around frustrated. Paul's generally offered to answer email too, so violapaul@gmail.com will be a good place to put your questions. Thanks again to CYC for hosting the talk too today. That was nice of them to take up the offer. And I wanted to say thanks to RaceQs, actually. Tell me his name again, Paul. We should remember. Sergey what?
Lubachov or something like that.
Yeah. So we love this guy. You know, we've never met him. He's a bit of a ghost right now. He's not answering email, but we'd really love to have him come up and give a real talk sometime. So anyway, thanks to the RaceQs people for making such a cool app. It's changed our life.
And thanks, Shauna, for organizing everything.
Shauna,
Yeah,
thanks. I think actually you were the inspiration for this talk.
Well, and I'd like to kind of talk a little bit. I mean, it's like, is that what we kind of envision is as more people start using RaceQs, we can have, come back into the clubhouse when COVID's over and, show everybody's race and kind of talk through everything. So it's learning for those people that are racing, but we've got a lot of people that are coming into sailing, and to kind of, have you guys who are very experienced talk about strategy and kind of, coach them is something that this is a nice thing that can be done. So.
And then that's totally awesome. I don't want to deflate that. That's our main message from Shauna's. I just wanted to add for next week, I'll probably go ahead and put the marks in on a race so you guys can watch me do that. We can review some tune-up sailing that Creative and Pure Gynt did, because I think otherwise all you have is your eyes on the water, and some people's eyes are better than others. Al can tell me what's wrong with our boat, even though he's not even on it. But you can also see those angles. You can see the speeds. You can see, hey, no matter what Pure Gynt did, they couldn't go as fast as Creative when they were low. I wonder what was wrong. Or no matter what happened, Creative couldn't get as high as Pure Gynt. Whatever those issues are, if you're out there tuning up with another boat, the old story is you can't make one boat fast. You can only make two boats fast, because you don't have any idea how to make one boat fast. You just don't know. The conditions are different. You can look at those polars, but RaceQs is another way to record all that data and then share those two things, and you can just look side by side. You can say, oh, here's what happened is, we were just trying to go too high there. And that's, we'll review some of that too.
All right, well, thanks again. Now, in these online talks, it's really hard to do the normal applause, but I have unmuted all of you. So if you'd like, you can yell out cheers, thank yous, or you can applaud if you'd like. So thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah and Paul.
Thanks.
Looking forward to seeing you all next week.
Take care, guys.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, good. Nice job, everybody. Nice job, Shauna.
Thanks, Sarah, and thanks, Paul.
See you. I think he and Al are already gone.
Yeah, hey, so I'll see you Saturday or Sunday. So Al just texted me just before this that we might be racing on Sunday instead.
Yeah, I don't know what the final plan is. I'm very free.
Okay. Well, it sounds like I think it's going to be a long race, so I think it's going to be lots of fun.
Yeah, actually, I don't think I've gone around the U buoy before. I'm gonna have to go find that.
I know. I know where it is, and it's going to be it's a strange buoy, so
Okay.
it'll be fun. Okay.
I think I found it on Navionics.
Okay. Take care. Thanks a lot. Bye bye.
See you out there.